a technical oversight committee playlist on
Awesome.
the Istio YouTube channel.
Oh, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. So Francois, by the way, he's very security conscious, so he always has a background, a fake background or some sort of blur. He doesn't right now, so it's the golden opportunity to see if there's anything incriminating in the background. I don't.
Use background to guess his passwords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Write a paper on it.
Good luck with that. Yeah, Jacob, I'm upping my game.
Let's see, how are we on quorum? We have four of 6.
Yeah, I think we should not expect Louis.
Hands on 2. Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Weekly release blockers.
So that's in a good shape, Swain. We reviewed it. We have ETAs and they don't look bad.
Is it? Oh, I see. I'm not sure. I don't see ETAs on the ones that are labeled release blockers, but you have those somewhere.
Yeah, me and Peter were working offline, so we haven't updated the sheet.
Sounds good.
However, I need attention on the testing again for this release. As you can see the stats, there are 62 P0s and 40 do not have ownership.
Our usual begging for assistance in TOC meeting.
Actually, I think in the past, though, it's good to do a prioritization pass to see which one of these are really P0s. I think what I've seen in the past is that we tend to copy the priorities from the prior release, and really it should be more about what's changed or what do we expect to require additional scrutiny.
So Josh, that's a good point. Peter has reviewed it twice for this release.
Yeah, I think it would be great for work group lead to review each subdomain and check the priority.
Okay. Also, Frank from Dev Working Group Lead mentioned that the test cases which are automated and says done, we need attention there as well. So it's good to test them as well. So I'm not quite sure what your suggestions are there. Like we are trying to automate them, but I think Frank also mentioned some of them do get into issues. So do we want to test them manually as well? That is something I would like to bring up.
So you're saying they're automated tests, but we don't trust the automated tests?
Well, there are some issues he mentioned. I'm not aware exactly what issues, but he did mention that there are changes and it's good to test them as well.
Well, so
I think the problem is the test checks the snippets in the code work, but it doesn't check that the English makes sense anymore. Like it could reference Citadel or something and not Istio or say something that does make sense.
Okay, so we want someone to at least like just go through each page. That seems onerous.
Yeah, I think we trust that the content is correct, so you don't have to try it out, but just like reading over the content, I suppose.
Just something I noticed real quick in multi-cluster, the before you begin is actually done. It's not used. There's no test for it directly, but all the other ones use that as the beginning. So it is actually tested. You can just mark that done.
Yeah, by the way, the multi-cluster document are really, really good. We've been testing extensively in the past week.
Yeah, Lynn and I got a multi-cloud demo up and running using the multi-cluster doc.
Sweet.
It actually worked. We had a request come in through Ingress, through IBM Cloud, go to the reviews service in Google Cloud on a primary remote setup, and then bounce back to a rating service in IBM Cloud, and then back through reviews, back out.
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is we didn't run into issues that I had to bug Nathan or Steven or anybody. It just worked.
Yeah, it just worked. It was pretty awesome. Okay, so
that's basically a miracle given the previous multi-cluster.
That's how I felt. I like submitted I just keep kind of apply to service, and like hit refresh on the front end, and it worked. It was a
Steve and
miracle.
I are taking donations if anybody wants to, contribute to our
We
fund.
did not check telemetry. That's a good question. We just made sure the traffic worked. And I think MTLS worked, although I don't know if we actually had MTLS forced on, but I think it was working. Just traffic went through. That was good enough. Okay, so anything else we need to do here, Shweta? One thing we should do is have, in the working group leads meeting on Tuesday, can you ask the working group leads to look through this and make sure the priorities are correct?
Yeah, we can do that. Also, if they want to work offline, like we have requested it, but if they can review it offline, that will be great. Otherwise, we can use the work. It's just that it's 30 minutes. It's not everyone is there. So if we can do it offline, otherwise I will repeat it again in the working group leads.
Okay, yeah, I think this is really the working group lead should jump on this because this could really de-scope the work that everyone else has to do. Would help a lot. Really focus the work on a few things that really need testing.
Awesome. Will do, Josh. In the meantime, can we also request ownerships for, because there are 40 P0s. I'm sure they will be reduced, but since the release is planned next week, 10th November.
And can we see? Go ahead. What I'd like to understand is what wasn't actually tested in week 1. Where are the gaps? So basically, this list is too big. I'd like to scope it down to the true P0s and also make sure that we're not, redundantly testing stuff that was already done in week 1, which is a separate tab.
I'm also a little concerned about the big nature of this. Like, once we have something that's more automated, why are we still having people have to go back and look at it? Is our code review process not good enough that we're actually reviewing the docs when we make changes to them? Because if things have changed, they were code reviewed when they were changed, right?
Good point.
Why are we saying that wasn't good enough? The automated testing is not good enough, and we still need someone to go manually check it.
No, we definitely want to get out of that habit.
Yeah, I think we want people to manually check in if there's a big like renaming, which we don't really have for this release. So I'm with Savan. If it's automated, I think it's pretty good. It's actually way better than what we had in any of the prior releases.
Yeah,
I mean,
that should be done at code review time, right? Like that's the right time to be reviewing a change to a doc.
Yeah, I mean, maybe what we are saying is at that point you need just an overview of the doc from consistency rather than actually if the steps work, right? That's what maybe Lynn is saying. But yeah, I agree.
I guess I can see that for maybe upgrade pages, which we typically have issues, but maybe for task, if it's the same and the primary purpose of the task is to execute the steps, it would be, it would be lower priority, really, in my opinion, to have a human to manually review those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, really, I'm wondering why there's something that says automation done, but it's still marked P0, right? So, like, could we move? We should at least move anything that's automated not to be P0.
Oh,
I'd love to just move it off this sheet.
So historically, these P0s reflected, I think, either they were untested or historically we have found many issues with that particular doc page, I think. Possibly automation negates that, possibly not, depending on how good the automation is, right, Sven? I don't know if you're still finding bugs in that doc.
Yeah, I just like this process seems broken to me, and I'm wondering what we can do to.
Yeah, how about we set everything to a P1 and we ask people like TOC, working group leads, and anyone who is contributing heavily to the project and knows what needs more scrutiny to bump things up selectively to P0.
If they're already automated, I think we should do that. I don't know about things that need automation. I don't want to necessarily move everything to P1. I don't know. Shweta, do you have thoughts on like how we can make this process shorter each cycle until it's gone?
I think the best one is automate. Do not release until all the P0s at least are automated. I mean, it will take some time. I know it's brutal, but at least it will get it done. Like hands on, heads down on automation for 1 week complete. Like stop the release, take 1 week off, and just automate all the P0s at least.
Okay, so here's my suggestion. So we should have the working group leads take a pass through, and we should figure out which things that don't have automation are actually P0s. And then let's go and actually see if we can get people assigned to each of those to work on the automation for them. Or at least test them now, but automate them before next release.
That sounds good to me, Sven.
Okay.
Awesome.
Is this automation the doc testing automation, or is this related to just general integration tests?
Doc testing.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And some things might be hard to automate, but we should do the things that are easy to automate. Let's get those done so we don't start time on them.
We actually had this discussion with Sean in the docs meeting, I think last week. And you know, the funny thing is, a lot of our documentation isn't exactly testable because it's just saying, oh, you can do this to do this thing. You know, there's no verification or anything like that. So a lot of the docs that are reference config are in that category. So I'm actually taking the approach for locality load balancing, which was in that form prior. So I'm actually doing the heavy lifting. I'm actually turning that into an actual real task where I can you know, say do this, do this, do this, do this, and then you know, verify, so we can actually write a test for it. So I suspect, you know, I mean, that's obviously heavy lifting, right? I don't expect people to do that by the next release, but it's probably something we should start thinking about doing one by one with the stuff in that category.
Yeah.
Wherever possible.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if someone can help put together a prioritized list of those, and then we can actually try to get people to sign up to do that work, right? It's like, so rather than a scramble towards the end of each release, it's as part of the release, we have a backlog of things that need to get automated, and we automate, you know, the top 10% or whatever.
Two small comments. One, it's good that we are consistent. Since 0.1 release, we always have the goal that next release will be automated. So I'm good that nothing changed. And second, yeah, always same goal. So second is, in reality, the problem is that we have too many features, like we discussed in the upgrade and the other issues. And until we kind of draw a line of what is a feature, what is not a feature, and we start killing all the, you know, kind of alpha things from the testing list, I don't think we'll, you know, it's something that will take years and years and years to sort through everything that we have. So maybe first we need to, you know, cut the cord and figure out which is really a feature that is passing.
So I think we can do that in parallel. I don't think we should.
We can do in parallel, yes, that's true. But
automating because we think some things, right? Like those should just be lower on the priority list, right? So there are clearly things that are features of Istio and should be features of Istio that do not have appropriate doc testing yet.
And a lot of doc needs to go away. I mean, that's what I'm saying. A lot of things are not ready to be documented because they are not ready.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well.
Costin, you're signing up for taking away docs. That's a good start.
Removing is always good. I mean, always
right.
removing code and documentation, signing up.
Right, let's do it.
Yeah, why don't you start with the error checking? No.
So
and just get rid of the whole learning microservices thing. And then... Sorry, go ahead, Shweta. That was a joke.
So I was saying, in summary, one thing which Josh suggested is to have the working group leads review the priority, right? I'll have them work offline, and in the working group leads meeting, we will review it with all of them if they haven't. Two, in the meantime, if people can take the ownership of some of the P0s, or should we wait for Tuesday to have the descope of some of these P0s?
Right. I think if there's things that people know are P0s, they can take them now. Obviously, we don't want to delay people taking things, but
Yeah.
let's make a broader call after that. So I do want to make sure that we follow up. So as part of this exercise, Shweta, can we try to end up with a list per working group of the top, I don't know, 3 or 4 docs that need to be automated for the 1.9 release?
Yeah.
Right. Make sure that's on the maps for 1.9.
I think it's a good idea since all of the working group leads have started working on the roadmaps. So this is a perfect time to add it. However, I would request for all the test cases, if we have the ownership of the working group. Currently, like, I do not know which test cases belongs to which working group, which is a problem. Then how do we distribute? Or if it is anybody can pick up anything, then it's fine with me.
Yeah, let's add, if there's not a column already, let's add a column to that.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thought Frank has a page that shows like all the each of the page which workgroup owns which doc page. So we can find out that for you, Shweta.
So Shweta, yeah, check with Frank to see if he has that.
Yeah, that will be great. That will be very helpful. And thank you.
Yeah.
Did we want to review this telemetry API today? Not sure who had put this on.
I think Doug had said he wanted people to review it offline.
Okay.
But he said he was going to say that himself. So Doug, if I'm talking over you, please jump in.
Yeah, I saw Doug on here earlier. He commented about the telemetry.
I've been helping Doug out for this if he's not online. We are in a reasonable spot where this proposal is. We've done a lot of back and forth to massage it. So yeah, I think what you said, Mitch, makes sense. Let's review it offline, make sure all the other members are okay with it, add comments, and then next week probably do a short presentation. Doug, I'm speaking for you and signing up you for work.
He's jumping in on the chat. He says he'd like the broader community to review offline.
Sounds good.
I actually had a small doc to review as well. I put it in the wrong place.
Well, yeah, I mean, docs to review are for offline review, basically, we should say.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's also docs for approval if they need approval. But I think you wanted to actually talk about yours. Okay,
Yeah, I wanted approval. I think it should be short and sweet. Talked about it in networking yesterday.
Let's hold on that. Let's do it in order.
Sure.
So what versions of Kubernetes should release 1.8 claim support for?
So Swain, one thing on this one, this comes every release around the end of the release, right? Which Kubernetes version to support, and we spend a lot of time. Is there a way we can produce a document? I think John created one, but that was offline. But this comes up like every time we start the testing.
Oh, we made the doc, and then we approved the doc, and then we decided that it wasn't a good idea. So I guess we need to I mean, we can take the doc and just change the numbers around, but we need to have a consensus on what versions we want to support, which we don't really have right now.
Are you talking about this doc, this one, John?
Yep.
Yeah, and don't forget we got dinged really hard on, I think it was 1.7, you know, for breaking up your Kubernetes 1.15.
Oh, so we do need to add, so we didn't add a row for 1.7 or for 1.8. Do we want to make this a living document and actually have, like, what should be the process? I guess that's the question, right? Yeah. Is it test and release comes with a proposal to TOC for each release? Maybe it should be and says, yeah, here's what we should support, and then TOC approves or disapproves.
Sounds good.
That sounds good, yeah. In fact, some of our users actually express interest to have this table in Istio.io, so they can actually easily match the Istio version to support the Kubernetes version.
I agree, Lynn. Jacob started a page which already supports the listed, which lists all the releases that are supported, and it supports releases which don't have patches, don't have CVEs. I think this will be a great addition there.
Oh, yeah.
Can this proposal also come at the beginning of the release versus like late in the release?
I don't know. It's hard. It's sometimes hard to. I mean, I guess actually we know when Kubernetes releases are supposed to go out. So yeah, we could try to have it earlier. Seems reasonable.
Do they mostly actually fall through and deliver on their timelines, or do they also slip most of the times? Like
I
having
think
this
119
conversation,
and 120 both are late.
that's why having this conversation early won't help. You'll have to have it again when the actual things release.
I mean, you can assume they will slip, and then it's okay. Because I think it's more about what old ones to get rid of, right?
But that's dependent on the new ones arriving. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we did a ton of work to get 1.15 support, so I don't know why we would not support it.
You're talking about for 1.8, John. Why would you not support 1.15?
Yeah, after we spent like many hours getting that to work.
What was the driver? The driver was the assumption that 1.15 has to be supported for 1.8, or was that some specific request from customers?
A bit of both. Like the main driver was Salesforce, but Salesforce is not the only one that applies to.
Yeah, we got a lot of bad social media when 1.7 goes out. People were like, wow, you guys really don't want us to move to 1.7 by not supporting Kubernetes 1.15.
So
Okay.
what is the downside to us supporting older Kubernetes here if we've already tested them?
I don't think there's that much. The main downside is I think it may be odd if we were to say we support 1.15 now, but then say the next release we say we only support 1.18 to 1.20. Like that would be a huge jump, which I don't think would be a good idea. So we're kind of, if we do it once, we're kind of permanently sticking us at least slightly delayed, which maybe is a good thing.
If we do it once and we don't maintain the precedent, we have a 2-level jump, minimum 2-level jump in the future. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. So then, John, from your proposal, what you're saying is 1.15 to 1.19 for 1.8, which will be the exact same as 1.7, or have we actually moved one release ahead?
We've moved one release ahead.
Okay. So basically from 3 release windows now, we are proposing 4 this time. Right. So 1.15, 1.16, 1.17. No,
And
actually,
It's
from a
5
test,
releases, right?
yeah. So what are the implications from a testing overhead? So I assume, John, that we have, when we declare support for Kubernetes, we have automated tests that covers it, right?
Yeah.
But if we look at, say, the manual testing we're doing on docs, that would not. Is that an issue?
No, the docs just runs on one version.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, do we have bandwidth to do qualification tests for 5 releases? That seems a lot.
My guess is when we do the long-running load tests and stability testing, are we doing that on a single release, John? Kubernetes release? I think we are.
Much.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, unless multiple people do it and they just happen to pick different ones, but we don't have a structured plan to select the Kubernetes versions and test all of them.
All right.
Okay.
So we have a testing gap, and if we actually close that gap, this would make it harder to close the gap.
I thought the decision here was that for minor releases, all of the Kubernetes versions get tested, and for the point releases, you rotate which one you're testing.
I'm not sure if we're doing that.
Okay.
I would add that environments, at least we are trying to support cross-version releases. So we also need a dimension of testing, 1.6, 1.5 against upgrade straight to 1.8.
That's true.
Which is mostly working actually, but
Yeah, I mean, this is something to consider. If we were actually testing appropriately, this would actually increase our burden. But since we're not testing appropriately, we're not aware that it would.
But the solution is the same. Basically, we need a matrix. I mean, we need a set of 20 clusters where we run tests, and it's just repeating the test.
This should increase our testing like computational burden, but if we're doing
It
it
does.
right,
If you have the right tooling, yeah, I agree.
team burden.
But it's a post-submit. It's or something you can do in the stability testing. I mean, it's not just costs of 20 clusters or 30.
So why don't we make a blocker for extending support to older Kubernetes versions should be improving that testing story and automating more of it.
Well, I think the short-term thing is we need to decide what 1.8 says.
Yeah.
I don't think we should go to 115. And the reason I'm saying is 1.7 right now says 116, 117, 118. We don't do skip version upgrades anyways. So
we want to start and
but it's not going to happen in 2 weeks. Right?
It's already working, really. It's just a matter of testing it.
Okay. That's not how what working means then. I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay.
If you have not tested your code,
It doesn't
you have
work.
not verified, and it doesn't work. It's like me saying I know Chinese, but nobody can understand it.
Well, it's part of the manual testing we do for all releases. A lot of things that we test manually is that set manager and other things that are not integrated.
Austin, I think we're saying if it's not automated testing, we don't count it as working.
Right.
So question, I assume we still don't support 115 for Istio 1.7, right?
That's what I'm telling
that
you.
That needs to be added first before 1.8
exactly.
could consider.
So can we at least agree that we will support 116 on, so 116 through 120 whenever it comes out? Is it already out? I don't even know Kubernetes status.
116 through 119. So that's going to already make it from 3 to 4. I think that's fair to do. Making it from 4 to 5 without adding it back to 1.7 does not make any sense to me, like Lynn is saying.
But even if we go from 3 to 4, we still have a testing gap there.
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah, okay.
But if we currently test 115, why do we drop it?
But
What's
we
the benefit? We currently test, that's what 2 lines above.
But we're not doing things like the stability testing, so we don't fully test 115.
I mean,
it's not tested for 117. Sorry, 1.7. These numbers are confusing. For Istio 1.7, we are still documenting 116 and above.
Sure, and 1.8 will say we'll support 115 because we added tests.
How will a person move from 1.6 to 1? Like that because we only support.
That's where the I mean, first of all, they can install straight in 115. So if they have Kubernetes 115, they don't have to move. They just install. And the alpha or development style cross-version migration would allow them even to move from 115.
That's a good point, because they can install fresh. You could actually say, yeah, we support.
But then how far do you go and when do you
get there? But
we look at numbers basically. If the number says there are plenty of users in 115, why do we want to tell them stop using Istio or stay on another version?
What happens when 121 comes out? Like, when do you stop? That's what I'm trying to tell Costin.
When number of users is small enough.
But Costin, we also need to back it up with testings. We don't just we don't just claim it works. So all of these things do have a cost for us.
Sure,
so I'm saying I'm okay if we do it, but we need to have the test in place. That's what I meant by having the testing be a blocker.
So we are changing the bar of testing. I mean, we're saying for some features it's okay to do manual testing. For other feature, it's okay to have what we are doing today for 115. But now we are saying that we want to have all the tests everywhere automated for 115. I mean, we need to be realistic and pragmatic here. It's
so given that 1.7 did not say we support 115, it doesn't seem necessary for us to actually say we support 115 with 1.8.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
How about we don't say, but we do?
Costin, we are not going to sue that.
Under promise, over deliver.
That's been our philosophy with the older Kubernetes releases anyway. The only exception was 115 where you explicitly broke it, right, for Istio 1.7. But now at least we don't have to say that.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
it could work.
If it happens to work, great.
Yeah.
But let's not put it like we are not telling our users to expect it to work. We're not supporting it.
And same for cross version. If it happens to work, we don't say we don't tell anyone, but it's our secret.
I think we could talk about for 1.9, trying to make that
sure
valid. That's part of our whole upgrade Tiger team discussion. Okay, so
Sven,
TC, go ahead, Naresh.
sorry, before we close this, I want to understand that. So we didn't support 115 in 1.7. A customer came. I understand it's a big customer.
A lot
but
of customers.
No, mostly it was driven by one. Hang on, let me finish.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then we said, no, we are going to support you because you are big.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're saying for 1.8, we won't advertise that we support 115. So someone comes along and says, I have a bug I found in 115 on 1.8. What do we do?
Well, we created a newer version of Kubernetes.
We are saying
Our official answer is that we don't support it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't prevent people in the community from fixing bugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
or supporting
Like,
it.
it's not going to say, please don't support. Kaufman, please. We won't say to the members of the community, you are not allowed to fix bugs in old releases, right? Like, that's okay. Vendors can do that, individuals can do that. But the official position of the project is that that's not supported, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, but okay.
So like,
but
if someone finds a CVE, right, like the person fixing the CVE does not have to go backport that, right?
Mm-hmm.
okay.
If
And
for
the
some
burden,
reason, that version, right? It's okay for people on the team to break it, and if people
That's what I'm saying.
want to support it, like it's on the person supporting it to go fix that, right? It's not on the person breaking it.
Makes sense. Perfect. Thanks.
So if I go break support for 115, right, and Costin wants to support 115, he has to go backport that and fix it himself.
And vendors may support it if they choose to.
Yeah, and vendors can support it. But yeah, I think we should make the official position 116. It is an interesting discussion, though, as the need to upgrade Kubernetes goes down, but Istio still needs to be upgraded because we're still maturing. It's like at some point this may become a drag on adoption, and I think we do need to be careful of that. I don't know what the answer is other than like starting to test every possible version. Like that sucks, but yeah, I don't know what do people do about this, because there's got to be the same problem with like operating systems on VMs, right?
LTS.
Like, they're more stable than LTS. Yeah.
LTS.
Yeah. Well, no, but like, so we would want Kubernetes to have LTSs, right? Because the problem is we're supporting so many different versions of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
If we do this, if we try to be nice to those users. Yeah. All right. Let's.
By the way, operating systems is both LTS and rolling upgrades. So Arch Linux, Debian, I mean, their both answers are used actively in the community.
And Sven, there's a dependency here which is unique, where we want Kubernetes features still, even though the customers might not want it.
Yes. Oh yeah, it gets complicated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So TOC approves 116 to 119 for 1.8. Sounds good. No one disapproves.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Nathan. Locality Pablo labels. All right, let me.
Sorry, can we add a comment that we approved 116 to 119, just for the record? Thank you.
We don't have few members. Do we have to wait, or it's fine? I think Louis is missing.
We have enough people though. Dan's
okay.
All right, Dan's here, right? Was Dan on? Dan, yeah, Dan, you're on. Yeah, we have 5 of 6. Okay. Nathan, do you want to go through this one?
Yeah. Are you okay? Yeah. Yeah. So this came out of some work that I've been doing to write tasks for locality load balancing. I wanted an easy way to have the user just kind of like configure various pods that were just in whatever clusters. Maybe it's kind that they don't have like locality or whatever. So I'm kind of building on like a 2 cluster scenario where we actually deploy 4 pods and put them in different zones and regions.
And Nate, actually, I wonder if you can describe briefly how locality load balancing works today, so we can understand how this is better.
This isn't locality load balancing. It's just allowing you to basically set locality for a pod, which is a very nice feature. It already exists today. It already. So let me say that this already exists today. but it's a hidden API. It's not public.
I see.
The trick is that I'm writing this doc that I want to be public, and it would be awkward to use a label that we don't officially document anywhere. So it seems like, we need to pop that up to like an actual API,
okay,
so that I can actually document it and feel comfortable that, I'm not doing something, magical that isn't clearly documented somewhere. So anyway, there are a few use cases we talked about in the network working group meeting yesterday. So I'll just go through the use cases. So as a service owner, I want to assign locality for my workload instances. However, the Kubernetes nodes do not contain locality labels, and I do not have permission to set them. So in that situation, you would be able to add that label to your deployment and say, okay, this is region whatever, zone whatever, and you could actually leverage Istio's locality. So similarly, number two, as a service owner, I want to override Kubernetes provided locality for my workload, and also I do not have permission to set the node labels. So similarly to number one, and then finally at number three, as a developer or a service owner, I just want to test Istio locality without having to rely on that muckety muck of actually having real regions and real zones, and which is effectively the use case I'm in with my my task. So it does have valid use cases. The name of the label today is Istio-locality. However, putting it in the API as that looks a little awkward because we don't use that kind of form. So I propose topology.istio.io/locality. We don't currently document anywhere on Istio.io the old label at all anyway. So I'm not even sure if we're telling users ever to use this thing. I suspect it's only been there for our internal testing to this point.
There may be a few people using it. So what would be their upgrades? Are we going to break them?
So I have in the design ideas here that we can consider just forever supporting the old label as well, to support both. However, downgrade could break them if they actually use the new label and then downgrade.
Yeah, I hear you.
It would stop. However, this is a pod label anyway. So I guess if they have it in their deployment, which is probably the most likely scenario.
Why don't we just treat it as if it was a published API and deprecate it? So for a release, we support both labels and then it goes away.
How do you deprecate something that was hidden? Do you
you put it in the release notes, maybe with a little apology. So if you happen to use this this API, we are going to get rid of it, and you can put the positive spin that we're actually formalizing it.
Yeah, we could say, okay, we could say as part of the release notes, we have this thing called topology to Istio.io locality.
I love that.
Yeah.
If you happen to be using the hidden thing called Istio locality, that's now deprecated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice of us to deprecate things that aren't even published at all, but.
Look, we had a discussion. We have a big discussion last week with several spinoffs about breaking people less often, and part of that was exactly about this hidden API thing. We're hitting it right here. Let's try to not break people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Microsoft is always good about that, right? They have things that are just not even part of an API. It's they have a bug in something, and they'll actually keep the bug around for you if you were relying on it. Okay, we'll do this.
So the one other thing I want to say about all this is in the process of all this, I realized that we're actually not currently documenting labels the same way as we do annotations. We actually have this special kind of processing we do to generate HTML for all of our annotations. And I basically want to just do the same thing for our labels. We have labels under Istio API that are currently they're just manually entered fields, while annotations are put in a YAML and we auto-generate Go code and HTML for them. So I want to do something similar, maybe for 1.8 if possible. So I'm actually working on a PR for that as well. The other bit is in doing that, I realized that there are a few annotations in the API that begin with alpha dot. So what is our policy for labels and annotations with respect to the feature progression? in terms of, do we name them differently, or do we just somehow document them in a table that says this is an alpha label currently versus beta versus GA?
What does Kubernetes do? Is there a prior art we can copy?
I think they may have used alpha in the past. I don't really know.
They were using it. And then also within annotations, you have alpha labels by vendors like Ingress. So it's a rat's nest. And I think, as far as I know, Kubernetes does not schematize or formalize annotations. And last I chatted with Louis, in Istio, we were trying to be similar, where formal APIs start from mesh config and then the CRDs that we have. So either we say our annotations are always alpha, and at some point we'll formalize it in a proper API, or we just remove them.
Like, I think there's labels, even in Kubernetes, there's labels that are not like part of some other API, right? Like the label is the API.
Give me an example. Maybe I'm missing something here.
Well, like the topology labels, those are an API.
Oh, I see. On the nodes itself.
Yeah. Like those are part of a feature for topology-based routing.
So I have a suggestion. So we do have this like auto generation of HTML. From a user's perspective, I think starting with alpha dot as a name and then having to change is just a huge pain, right? So I mean, we have this table. We could just add a column to the table and add to the YAML. Like we can specify manually what feature level it is. So is it alpha? Is it beta? And we can just throw that into a column in the table, and that will be our documentation. That seems better to me than using the name of the label or annotation itself anyway.
I agree. That has been a problem. Like trying to have an alpha or some other schematized thing in the annotation and then migrations are a problem. That happened with all the Ingress resources.
So we could treat this the same way we are trying to treat like new fields in existing APIs that are maybe alpha, right? It's the same kind of thing where you're saying, we're not going to call the field like alpha underscore something. We're just going to use the name for it, but we're going to indicate in comments or whatever that that's an alpha field. And it might be
exactly.
That's a good analogy. I agree.
Labels are like fields, and we can treat them the same. Okay. I'm fine with that.
Okay, cool. That wasn't an RFC, but it sounds like I got approval for that too.
So I'd like to ask some questions on the requirements. So certainly, I think we had this discussion yesterday that if you use locality load balancer today, you don't really set this particular label that you are deprecating because your nodes are already annotated and our code can automatically detect your locality for you, which is why we never publish this in our official documentation, because we don't expect user to use it, right? So back to your requirement, I think the question we had on the networking work group yesterday was, when you don't have permission to set your node label, wouldn't it be reasonable to ask your admin to do that for you? Do you think your admin would actually want you to specify locality yourself as a service owner? Wouldn't that make more sense to have the admin to give the proper node label so Istio can automatically discover the node label for you and figure out the topology for you? I'm trying to understand, would that be an alternative route for you in your test framework so that we don't necessarily need to advertise this to our user?
I'm sorry, how does that pertain to the test framework exactly?
So, so correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard from the meeting yesterday, John, is that the node label, you can use Kubernetes API to annotate the node, to set it, and then Istio would be able to, based on that node label, to kind of interpret what's the node you are on, which is similarly as how Istio did today, discovers like the node label for different cloud providers.
Yeah, I mean, setting node labels is probably not something you would be able to do directly. So I don't think our test framework does that today anyway. I think the way we do it is we kind of hack it with service entry, which does allow you to use label. So you're talking about our current end-to-end test with locality, I think is what you're talking about. And so that's what we're doing today. But I think this is actually a better alternative. This is much simpler by just like saying this workload is going to be this locality because I'm just testing, locality load balance.
But is it kind of weird? Is it kind of weird to have us document something that no user should ever really do? And we were saying this is how you use locality load balancing.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to do something that that you shouldn't actually do.
Right,
Like,
that's what I'm getting at. Is there any other purpose using this other than your testing?
Yeah, to even go further, like one thing that I've heard about our docs as a negative is that we provide a bunch of examples and not a bunch of explanation of how things work. Is the real end goal that you can go and copy and paste a bunch of commands and it works, or that you actually understand what's going on? Like, do we really need a copy and pastable, I added this label to this pod and I can see it works? Or do we just need to explain how to use it and get them to actually do the real thing that they would do and actually get, a multi-zonal cluster and then see the locality load balancing?
So
it seems a bit contrived that like the goal is not to get people to run the curl command on their cluster and see it load balance, right? The goal is to get them to understand how to do it for real.
So we need to be able to test it, right? So I mean, if we can go ahead and set localities in kind, I guess that's fine. We would just have to manually do that from outside of the snippets of the test, obviously. So yeah.
You don't have an issue with tests, right? We already test this code, and we have, I think, pretty good tests. You're adding new code. You're adding a new doc and then saying we need to test that, but why do we even need to test it if we don't provide copy pastable demo samples?
We need to test what we document, right? Right now we don't have a test for what we document. We have a test that tests the feature, but we don't have a test that tests the document.
Right. So what in similar situations where we're writing things that are not these simple copy paste demo book info things, like for example, Cert Manager. We have a document on how to provision a real certificate with Acme and stuff. We don't have a doc test for that because it's somewhat hard to test. Instead, we explain how to do it, and we give them examples. We point to the documentation, but it's not a copy and pastable task. I don't know that our users are hurting as a result. Like, do they really need a copy and pastable task that we need to verify is correct? Or can we point them to the documentation, show them examples of the configuration, and leave them be?
So if we don't have a test for something on Istio.io, it's eventually going to get out of date and probably be wrong or something of that nature, right? That's the whole point of wanting to test, effectively 100% of Istio.io. So if we document it, we should test it somehow. So I mean, your point's still valid. I mean, should we document something that they ultimately shouldn't use in production? So I mean, if we didn't document this, then from the perspective of a docs test, I guess theoretically I could just set node labels or something of that nature. However,
or we could create clusters in 2 different regions, right? And like create a cluster in 2 different regions, hook them up into a mesh, and then.
Well, we're dealing with kind though, right? Like our tests are running in kind. So what do we do? We're going to need. So right now for multi-cluster, we create 3 clusters. But you don't know what node things are going to get assigned to, so you can't. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, we could just not document the label and actually use it under the covers. We could use it under the covers when we deploy.
It sounds like something we should see if we can fix in the way that we're setting up our tests separately. Like, we should see if it's fixable in the test to have different nodes and being able to this cluster's on this set of nodes and this cluster's on this set of nodes, and the nodes have different labels. So we should be able to test that. I think the question here is, why did we have this label in the first place? Was it just for testing, or was it Like, does this label exist only to make our own testing work, or are there actual use cases for our users that they would want to use?
So yes, there is a use case for that, which is you run in a class in a Kubernetes that is not properly returning the labels, because that's something that JKE provides and big vendors provides, node annotation, but it's not guaranteed to be always. But what I want to say is that this kind of feature shows that we need some way to run tests on real infrastructure, where some JKE and Azure and so forth provides a label officially. We have some clusters where we don't have the label, so we need to find a way to test also on infrastructure. I know Kind is running most of the tests. We have unit tests, we have Kind tests, but we also need real life tests as well. And some tests will have to happen in on a real environment where we test the integration with that environment. We cannot simulate everything.
I'm not sure I disagree with your comment, but there's no reason we can't do this in Kind as well. I mean, we can do
I think that's a separate discussion.
much more time. We can add whatever labels we want. We can do any customization.
So John, we can do it in unit tests, of course. We can do it in Kind. We can do it in a lot of ways, but nothing substitute for testing on a real production system that is, kind of behaving in a different way. You cannot simulate. I mean, in Kind, you kind of.
So hold on a second. So
it's
that's
not a simulation.
Hold on.
It's the exact same thing that GK does. Yeah, go ahead, Sven.
So this discussion is not about how to do our testing, right? This discussion is about should there be a public API for overriding locality on a per basis, right? Like, it's a user question. We can figure out how to do that separately, right? Like, we shouldn't mix these two things. The thing should be about whether this should be a public API. And the question there is there a valid use case where a user needs to set this? Costin gave an example of, you're running on a Kubernetes cluster that doesn't have these labels set, and you want to be able to set them, and you don't have access to the nodes.
Yeah. So
Sven,
I think that's how the meeting yesterday ended in networking working group. Write down the use cases, and then we should evaluate what to do. Maybe Nathan, you have it in the use case here. I didn't get a chance to see your doc from yesterday's meeting, but unless you need it in 1.8, I would say let's just go back to networking working group with your doc there. I don't think it needs an TOC approval just yet.
Okay, I was thinking because it was an API, it was a TOC topic.
I mean, that's fair, but it looks like the networking working group leads here, John mostly, it's still not on the same page, right? So get him on the same page and then present what you all want to do.
Okay, well, I already had approvals from both John and Costin, but that's fine. We can talk about it next week.
Charles undoing is a
Does that sound good, Sven? I mean, it doesn't look like there's anything we can do.
Yeah, it does sound right. This should be the networking working group should agree that this is a feature we should publish to users.
Actually, Nate, could I add one thing to this? Could you also get approval from Shriram?
There you go.
Sorry, Nate.
Oh, that's right.
Hopefully, he'll return your message.
We should. Okay, we're almost out of time. So we're sending back to networking.
Yeah, I mean, the approvers don't look like they have the approval. So discuss it and come back.
Okay. Google wants me to fix my grammar. Thanks, Google. Okay, release manager nominations for 1.9. You're saying you're asking for them, Shweta?
Yes, I'm asking for the nominations. Normally what happens is I give the heads up and a TOC takes a week or 2 weeks to for the nominations, and then we assign them.
Okay.
And then there is a proposal for 1.9 to be on 9th February. So that's another thing I wanted to ask if everyone okay. It's a Tuesday.
What I want to know is when is code freeze based on that?
Okay, so code freeze normally happens 1 week before that. So I can bring up the timelines for 1.9 next week.
Wait, code freeze is 1 week before release?
Before 9th February, yeah.
No, I think you guys are talking about two different things. I think what Sven's asking for is 1 month before, if I'm understanding right. Like we cut the branch 1 month before.
Yeah, we call that feature freeze, I think. Yeah.
Feature freeze. Okay, feature freeze is 1 month before. Code freeze is 1 week before.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was asking more about feature freeze. So my question, the reason I ask is that to like if feature freeze is early in January, right after holidays, is that time post? Like, is it basically forcing some people to have to try to work over the holidays to get stuff done?
That's a good point.
And I wonder if we should give 1 more week to reduce some of that pressure. What do people think?
Sven, some of that depends on what we want to set on the roadmap and whether we want this to be a stability improvement release or whether we want this to include a lot of features.
You're saying if it's a stability release, it's okay to cut earlier because most of the work is in stability anyway, and that should be happening kind of after cut too?
After cut, well, I think I would expect that a stability release would simply have fewer changes going into it, hopefully, than one that adds a whole bunch of new features. Maybe that's not a good assumption. I don't know.
Yeah, I would kind of agree. Like one option is to push back the date, but the other is just to do less stuff, right? Which so far I've only seen the environments and networking, but both of those groups I think are planning to do that regardless, just for stability and because of the holidays and stuff anyways.
Anyone else have thoughts?
Keeping the data as is seems fine to me, Sven.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Sounds good. Okay, so let's get some release manager nominations in. When do we want those by? And I guess it doesn't matter too much, but so we have a couple weeks.
2 weeks normally it works, but any time works for me.
Yeah, that's a good point, Doug. We can always move it back. It's easier to move back. It's easier to start early and delay then.
We have more experience doing that.
If you're trying to release manager, please don't leave Istio. That would be the requirement.
Okay, so what is our process? I guess, like, what is our process for gathering nominations for release manager?
I mean, anybody can nominate. Usually, like you, Josh, Lynn, folks from other companies then have provided certain names, and then we review them.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a process. It's pretty informal. The only process side is just TOC needs final approval. So yeah, we'll have some conversations, but everyone should figure out who they want to nominate.
And who do they send those nominations to? I'm trying to make this a little bit more of a process.
So normally they add it in this document, Swain, like wherever we are asking for the nomination, they just plus it and they add the name of the nominee.
Okay, can we add a section or something?
So basically, we are saying for now, you have a week, add your names, and next week we'll come back and see what happens. If there are no names, we'll try to find people. Right?
But I would agree, Swain, we should have a formal process and we should add it to our Istio document or wiki. We do not have it yet.
Yeah, we should. Okay, so I would love if I can kick this over the test and release working group to say, can you make this a little bit more formal of a process other than just bring it to TOC? Does that seem fair? Or I guess it's low. It's not very high stress at the moment, but. Neeraj, Josh, Lynn, Dan, thoughts?
We should probably formalize this. I think right now it's kind of the people who are closer to some of the influencers on the projects are more likely to be release managers. So we should clean that up.
Yeah, I agree, Josh.
Okay.
And as part of this, I think it would be good to clarify the requirements for being a release manager. I think in the past we may have said that you have to be at least a member, but you don't have to be a maintainer.
Yeah. I think we can also add the release manager responsibilities because, for example, every release, I meet with the release managers every week and we do a lot of improvements. I don't think that's reflected. So we should add those responsibilities while they're becoming a release manager. What else is coming with it?
Yeah, and I guess what's the expected time commitment from people?
Right, right. For the responsibilities, I can work this release managers and the last ones to collect what we normally do. So it's available to everyone.
Yeah, let's put together like a just short doc on responsibilities, time commitment, requirements, and come up with a process.
So in
lightweight. Yeah.
Okay.
And Shweta, you had just documented what we talked about earlier, right?
Yes, just wanted to make sure everyone is agreeing, and if there is any disagreements, I mean, I just wanted to have consensus on what we discussed.
Yeah, this all sounds really good.
Okay, so each working group.
I think I might have broken on testing, and I'm trying to fix it. So somebody needs to help me get the new image pushed out. John. I see most of the tests are failing.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Then it's good. And having the delete.
We are over, so I'm gonna drop. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one.